That moment when the record button is pressed, the uh-oh. I've been there with many an artist where the uh-oh happens. Yesterday, somewhere during the day, I was watching some YouTube stuff and I came across an artist that I used to work with. Occasionally I would work with this guy and do his vocals, record his vocals, and I hadn't really heard him sing in a couple of years, at least a year. No, it's definitely been a couple of years. Everything's been a couple of years after this pandemic. And I noticed a huge difference in delivery, feel, performance, tone. The difference was kind of like sort of stunning to me. And I actually shot him a note right away, a text saying, hey man, just caught this clip of yours on YouTube, and I don't know what you did, but for me, things have come a long way. And then I got the response at 3 o'clock in the morning, which was just, I forgot to put my phone on airplane. Anyway, I'm going to be talking about the Hucksters a little bit. Let me grab my iPad notes. Because I use the term every often. I knew I was correct in my usage of the word. A huckster is anyone who sells something or serves biased interests, uses pushy or showy tactics. Historically, the term meant the type of peddler or vendor, any type of peddler or vendor. But over time, it assumed pejorative connotations. I looked up pejorative, that means slur. I use slurs quite a bit, or pejoratives. So I'm talking about teachers, experts, coaches, gurus, academia. I saw some shit over the past week from one of the well-known music colleges. This guy was doing an interview about production. And the shit was so canned and so rehearsed and so repetitive over something he's probably groomed over the past God knows how many years, and just spitting out all kinds of buzzwords about production and how artists can thrive and all this kind of stuff. And this guy has no fucking idea. He hasn't been out in the field, hasn't been out in the world ever. He went from music school right to a little bit of hacking, and then got a gig at like I said, a very well-known music school education empire in the Northeast. And what a crock. The unbelievable, the huckster of hucksters. I mean, some of the things I've seen that I'd like to see, if anything comes out of this, would be like some artists out there and or producers or mixers and engineers who avoid the catastrophe of thinking that it's okay to fall victim to the guru, to the coach. There's always a good amount of information to be had from anybody, and it doesn't have to be just within your field. You can get a ton of info. Like I have a note here saying good books to read for artists. These are books that I've recommended over the years. The War of Art by Stephen Pressman, Lynchpin by Seth Godin, and Stephen King on writing. Not musicians. And I'm assuming that I'm talking mostly to musicians. There's a lot of value in going outside of the field for inspiration, info, things that can take your thing to the next level. Let's just use guitar teachers and vocal coaches. I've had many experiences with vocalists who come to a session and they have literally been with the same vocal coach for too long, anywhere from a couple of months to several years. And at this point, they still literally cannot sing through a song without having like a mental breakdown, panic attacks, all kinds of things. And it's largely aside from possible other medical issues maybe that the person has, whether it's mental health or whatever. And that, I'm no expert in that. That's for somebody else. But I'm talking about the artist who has someone who's so inside their head that they can't be inside their own head anymore. So they have just literally gotten to that point of paralysis by analysis, overthinking this. There's too much air conditioning. There's not enough air conditioning. It's too humid. I have allergies. I need tea. I didn't get enough sleep last night. I got too much sleep last night. You get the picture. Getting back to that, the artist who, quite frankly, gets completely f***ed up by having too many lessons in their head, too many instructions. I can tell you often, not just once in a while, but often, let's just say 90% of the time, I can read into that situation really quickly. And usually it comes down to a few things that the coach is putting them through. And that is, the coach is living vicariously through the artist. A classic nightmare for the artist. The coach is spending most of their time during the sessions that they have with the artist, wowing them with their skills. Usually they are, and just be as harsh as it gets here, coaches usually are failed artists. Teachers are usually those who can't, you know, that old line, those who can't teach. And yes, there are exceptions, and there's some great teachers out there. There's some great instructors. There's some great coaches out there. But you have to be able to decide or know when to cut bait and say, this isn't working for me. Even if this person has great credentials, even if they're recommended by your favorite vocalist or favorite guitar player of all time, if it's not working for you, if you're not making progress, you are losing valuable time. You're losing in the game. And that goes for if you're working with a producer or a mixer or an engineer that you're just not feeling as though things are going in a positive direction. You're not learning from it. And you have to be willing to learn. You're not learning from it. Your art is not improving. Your overall mood is not improving with regards to your project. Then you may have to move on. It's just part of the process. A lot of vocalists don't really understand that they're going to have good sessions and bad sessions. And that is part of getting better. You have to have a lot of bad sessions under your belt. All artists have bad sessions. All artists have bad vocal days. But they aren't typically, it isn't a thing of like, well, I have a hard time getting from this gap in my vocal to this next part of my vocal, that's where my trouble is and everything. I've heard every excuse under the sun, and then usually they have nothing to do with what's actually going on. Usually it's the fact that the artist is overthinking, uptight, and creating their own difficulties. Oh, the headphones are confining. Oh, I don't like hearing my voice in headphones. I don't like hearing my voice with reverb. I don't like hearing my voice without reverb. All of these things don't come up with artists that have gotten to the next level. You know, you'll have your occasional neurotic mess, but usually that's because someone somewhere down the line has now gotten into their head. The huckster has appeared, the guru. Getting back to the artist that I was talking about that I saw on YouTube yesterday, it's always an interesting thing to me when I work with singers in that some can find their own voice and others never do. How can I explain that better? I think it's a good technique for an artist to have several tones at their disposal. And I've worked with several artists that have this kind of thing where they know they have their go-to voice, their go-to raspy voice, their go-to sweet voice, their go-to clean voice, their go-to power mode. and their go-to whisper vibe. So they get into character, but they're not going for a character that isn't them. They've internalized this voice or voices that still is them, but now they're connecting to the song on a performance level and on an emotional level. Other problems that I've seen coming from vocalists that are somewhat professional students, always being worried about whether they can hit a note, obviously hit a high note, as opposed to probably the most important thing in music is hitting the right note, but tempo and rhythm and sense of time. Every great vocalist I've ever worked with has an incredible sense of rhythm. And that includes rappers. It's all about rhythm. It's all about the flow. It's all about the tempo. Lead vocals are the same thing. Background vocals are the same thing. What type of rhythm you're singing the vocal in, how you're playing with the beat, how you're moving the vocal with the beat, the feel of your cadence is part of things, and it seems to be never worked on with these gurus, these vocal coaches and guitar players. Is the same thing. They're all about playing the riff and getting the execution down, but they'll do it with complete disregard to tempo. Vocalists, when you're trying to get to a note, often a vocalist will say like, "Oh, give me a second, let me work on this in my headphones," and they'll work on the run, melodic run, to get to a certain note, and they will manipulate the practice of it with no reference to time, which allows them to get to the note because now they've sped up or slowed down enough to get to the note. Then they feel comfortable, like, oh yeah, I can get to that. But they have not practiced it to tempo. So then when you go to record them and you're at tempo, everything falls apart again and they can't understand why. Oh, then it must be the headphones, it must be the reverb, it must be the maybe that guitar's too loud, that's throwing me off, all these things. How do you get better? That goes back to having good sessions and bad sessions. You have to have a load of bad sessions to go along with the good ones to arrive at that voice of that understanding of like, yeah, I'm singing like me right now. I'm playing guitar like me right now. I'm connecting to the song emotionally and physically there. I'm in the moment and I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm not thinking about advice. I'm not thinking about whether my girlfriend texted me yesterday or not, whether she's going to... All these things are out of your mind. You're in the moment. Huge thing. Other ways to get better is collaborations. Work with as many people as possible. Understand that all collaborations are not going to work. And some are going to be amazing. And those are the ones you want to continue until they die on the vine, which, eventually they all do, unless you're Keith Richards and Mick Jagger, and even they have sort of had their moments.